Hello, I'm Brigantia, Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Thursday. It's time to go into Samhain preparations again, and this week we're discussing some customs both old and new. It is that time of year when we need to start finalizing our Samhain plans. And this is true whether we're celebrating with a large pagan community, a smaller coven, our family circle, or if we're just having a private ritual all on our own. Some of these ideas we're going to talk about have very ancient roots, others are more modern. All of it has evolved and been reinterpreted and redone throughout the various centuries, and hopefully it will inspire us, whether we're needing to adapt some of these ideas to a larger setting or to a smaller setting. The main thing is we all want to get the most out of this holiday that we can. So let us start. Samhain is, of course, one of the four major fire festivals, and this was particularly true for the ancient Celts. One of the customs at the time is that people would allow their hearth fires to die out, and then there would be a ceremonious relighting of the community's sacred fire, and this would be conducted by Druid priests. It was a time to make offerings, say prayers, and food offerings were actually left at the edge of villages, and this would be for the benefit of any wandering spirits of Fae who were known to be roving about on this particular time. There is also a sacrifice of livestock, because of course not everything in the herd would be able to be sustained through the entire winter. And of course with the sacrifice of the livestock, that meant that people would have additions made to their larder so that they would also make it through the winter. After this ceremony, people would return home. They would have a brand that was lit from the communal sacred fire, and then they relit their own hearths, as well as their own bonfires and torches that they might have around the fields. And of course, this was for protection and also in hopes of energizing the land so that there would be a good harvest for the following season. Fire can also play a major role in our modern day celebrations. If we have a fireplace or a wood burning stove or something of that kind, we can perform a ceremonial relighting of the fire. This is definitely a good time to make offerings to our ancestors, the Fae, our deities, particularly if our deities have any kind of associations with Samhain. And if we're lucky enough to have the space and we're able to legally hold a real proper bonfire, that would be a wonderful opportunity to gather with friends, family, our spiritual brethren, have a potluck and celebrate Samhain. It wouldn't even have to necessarily be overtly pagan. If we have friends or family members who wouldn't be super comfortable with that, we can still have the fun of the spirit. We can still gather together with everyone, be thankful for the blessings we have and get ready for the long sleep of winter ahead. Now we have the custom of costumes. Even the Celts were known to wear disguises during Samhain. This was usually, they would make themselves up to look like animals or some kind of monsters from their mythology. And the idea is that this would prevent anyone from being kidnapped by unfriendly Fae, because let's not forget, not all of the Fae are universally friendly towards human beings. Now, this custom of putting on a costume, it's morphed into modern times for wearing costumes for trick-or-treating or at Halloween parties, and it is a fun way to get into the spirit of things. It doesn't have to be super elaborate or super expensive. It's just more so about participating in it. Then we, of course, have jack-o'-lanterns and torches, jack-o'-lanterns, and other lights. They were always believed to keep unfriendly spirits at bay, but it also had the dual purpose of lighting the way to the other world for people who had passed during the previous year. Now, today, our jack-o'-lanterns generally communicate that a household is passing out candy on Halloween. But there's no reason why we couldn't also bless any lighting that we have to also help those departed to find their way to the other world. No one will really know that it's done, but we will, and that will hopefully help some spirit who's trying to find its way. Now, for feeding the dead, this relates to the idea of having a dumb supper, and this custom has very deep historical roots. Now, the basic idea is that you make dinner and you set aside a place for a dead ancestor to visit and give them an opportunity to feed off the energies of the prepared meal. The meal is either eaten in silence or with very, very soft conversation, except at the beginning of the meal when you invite the ancestors to join in with you, and then at the end of the meal when the ancestors are farewelled. Now, in Ireland, it used to be customary to leave doors and windows unlocked and set out cakes for the dead, and they could just come and go. Now, given the day and age we're living in, I don't recommend anyone leaving doors and windows unlocked. I mean, we do need to use our smarts. But when this was the done thing, any mortal person who ate the food intended for the deceased was considered to be guilty of sacrilege, and they were condemned to be a perpetually hungry ghost in the afterlife. So, depending on how strong a belief someone had in the afterlife, that could have been quite, what's the word? Quite the deterrent. There we go. Now, after the meal, it was usual to provide entertainment because you had dead relatives visiting. So children would play games. A lot of them would relate to the Samhain rituals, and whereas the adults would talk about the events of the last year. And the idea is that this way the ancestors could get caught up in the family news. It was a way of reconnecting and acknowledging that even though you couldn't see them anymore, that they were still very much a part of your family. This is a custom that would be relatively easy to revive for us, if we haven't done so already. Many pagans do. But the nice thing about holding the dumb supper is it doesn't require any special tools. You don't have to have any particular knowledge. You don't have to go to any extra expense. And it's a way for the whole family to connect with those who've died and realize that, we're a part of a much larger family tree. So, something to think about. Next, scary creatures. Scary things in general. The idea of unfriendly spirits or mysterious creatures and frightening things, this is as old as the human species itself. And in ancient pagan times and the whole of the Christian era and today, we have all kinds of myths, legends, and stories that are meant to thrill and scare the listeners. It almost doesn't matter if, something was true or not. It's the idea of it. It's the imagination. So whether it's telling ghost stories around a campfire or watching scary movies or dressing up as some monstrous creature, Samhain is an opportunity for us to explore fear in a controlled way. And that in turn helps us to learn to deal with fear in a more sensible manner. And it's also a way of coming to terms with what happens after the end of our particular, this current incarnation. What happens after that? And realizing that it's not all bad, that there is a sense of fun, and that even when we're exploring, scary ideas or scary creatures, whether it's something from ancient mythologies or anything from our more recent past, it's just the idea of learning to deal with these things, figuring out what they represent to us, why they have such a psychological hold. It's valuable work. And then we have trick or treating, and we can thank the Irish, the Manx, and Scottish customs because they essentially gave birth to trick-or-treating as we currently know it today. Now, it began with poor going door to door, and this was called mumming or souling. In exchange for a baked good called a soul cake, they would sing songs or offer prayers for the dead. And then we had Punky Night in Somerset, and a punky was a lantern that was made from a turnip or a beet. I mean, just imagine carving that. But this punky represented the souls of dead children, and children would go around asking their neighbors for money to pay for fireworks that could be set off the following night, and it was considered very bad luck to say no. In other places, children sang songs to whoever answered the door in exchange for a treat, and in France, children would ask for flowers rather than food, and then they would use the flowers to decorate graves of family members. We too, today, we can participate in handing out candy or small inexpensive toys. It's neighborly to get into the spirit of things and to take the opportunity to interact and connect with our neighbors. We're all so separated from each other now, and it's not really a good thing. I don't think it's beneficial to society or to ourselves as individuals. So having some friendly interaction with other people is something we could all do. Excuse me. Now, pranks. Samhain was always a time of mischief, and so is modern day Halloween. Now, thanks to the fuddy-duddies amongst us who can't take a joke, even the most harmless of pranks is now strongly discouraged, which is another reason why it's the graceful thing to do to participate in common festivities, make the occasion as fun as possible, so that children who are bored, or even adults who are bored, that they don't let that boredom get the better of them, and that all that mischievous energy is channeled in directions that won't lend with anybody getting into any kind of particular trouble. Now, on that note, we have parties and games. While it is a solemn spiritual occasion, Samhain is also a time for fun, and it's always been a good time to throw a party, play some games, just get together with people. And in times past, it was also an occasion for matchmaking, and it gave the unattached in society a chance to socialize and get acquainted in a more relaxed way. A lot of the traditional forms of divination that were specifically used at Samhain were intended to reveal who a potential spouse might be. And then there are other people who go to all kinds of effort to create haunted houses for their local community to enjoy, and they have all kinds of different themes. Some of them are really incredibly detailed. It's absolutely amazing to see how creative people can get with this, and it's a fun thing to do. And then we also have witches' balls. That's another fun way to mark the occasion. There is a Samhain witches' ball that's held in New Orleans annually, but it would be nice to see this custom spread into other areas. So if you know you're in an area where there is a larger population of pagans, you might get together with some of the people in your local community and say, do we just want to do something for Samhain, something that would be fun, something that would get into the spirit of things? It's just something to think about. So, we really do have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to customs that are old and new that all relate to the Samhain season. We can find inspiration all over the world in nearly every time period from the cultures that our deities come from. We can begin new traditions with our families and covens. There's just no shortage of options. So if you're still brainstorming what you're going to do, I hope this inspires you to get into the mood to start making some final plans. And I can't wait to hear all about what everyone is getting up to. So if you haven't already, please join our community on Discord. It's called Blackbird's Brew. There will be a link in the description box below. And of course, like and subscribe. And I shall see you in another video. Bye.